If you've been rejected by Oxford today, it absolutely sucks, but I completely get how you feel. I was rejected by Oxford on this day 2 years ago. I'm going to run through what happened with me, both on the day and over the next few days and weeks, so you guys know what it might be like. But then we'll also look at some more practical stuff, requesting freedom of information, subject access requests, basically getting as much info as you can, and then deciding what to do with it, going somewhere else, reapplying, thinking about the medium and longer term as well. But hopefully this will be the video you need to both calm you down, put it into perspective, not all is lost, it's not the end of the world, things will get better, and also provide some practical advice. But we'll start with my story, and I expect a lot of it will sound very similar to your situation. Oxford was my absolute dream university. I worked really hard on my application. I did every single admissions test prep that was on the Oxford website and found some other older ones from unofficial places to do those as well. I entered essay competitions to talk about in the interviews, and to be quite frankly honest, I'd never wanted anything in my life at that point as much as getting into Oxford. And I probably felt that no human ever had ever wanted anything as much as I wanted to go to Oxford. That was for a number of reasons. Number one, I'd heard such good things about it, but also because I'd put my heart and soul and all my effort for quite a long time into this application, I really wanted to pay off because otherwise it would be all for nothing. On the day, I was feeling super nervous because of that, and also I did feel a big pressure, both from myself because I knew how much I wanted this, also from my friends and family similarly because they knew how much I wanted it and how much it would be great for me. Also, I felt it from my school. I was actually deputy head boy, so there was that reputation and maybe expectation that I should do well for the school as well. And for me personally, the course I applied for, Classics, the admission odds weren't too low compared to some other Oxford courses, so I thought I had the best chance possible, and it would be really bad if I messed up my opportunity. But there we go, I didn't get in the end. Actually in 2020, Oxford and Cambridge came out on the same day, so there were quite a few people from my school applying, and we were all nervously around each other. By the time I came up to my form group where we would get registered in the morning, and I was just on UCAS on my phone constantly refreshing, I got to the point where I was refreshing and it used to say 3 of my 5 universities had gotten back to me, but as I was refreshing, 3 out of 5 have got back, 3 out of 5 have got back. I refreshed it once more at probably 7 minutes past 9 in the morning, and it said 4 out of 5 have gotten back to you. There it was. My result was now in. I'm sitting there with my mate next to me who's in my form group. We were just chatting and then suddenly I go silent because I've got my result. And I scroll down to the bit at the top of UCAS, which is the accepteds, and I can see in alphabetical order Bristol at the top, and then it was Nottingham, and I knew the next one should be O for Oxford. I mean, my heart rate was very high for the whole day naturally. I couldn't really get a good night's sleep, and even once you wake up, you know exactly what's going to happen today, so your heart rate's already probably at like 120. But by the time I refreshed it and it was 4 out of 5, you know, it was so high. And then I scroll down a bit more and it says UCL. And then you go down to the next bit, which is places not giving you an offer, rejected, or you've withdrawn it or something like that. And there I can see University of Oxford. It's still very weird talking about it now because it's not a nice thing to reminisce over. But in that moment, I was absolutely distraught. I knew I'd worked so hard for it, and then there was the result. In a way, it was kind of all for nothing. Then our form tutor comes in to register us. He was actually my Greek teacher as well, so I showed him, and again, he was also very casual about it. He said, don't worry, it's a bit of a shame what to do, something like that. And it hadn't really sunk in yet, because it's so new, of course. But once it started to set in over the day and over the next week or so, the 5 stages of grief really did hit. The first stage is denial, and that's exactly what I felt, at least during that form period. I knew I hadn't got in, but it definitely hadn't processed, and I probably refreshed it a few more times to see if it would then pop up back into the accepted bit or something. It just hadn't hit yet. I still was thinking I was waiting for an outcome. As you go around to your lessons through the day and you see people from your year, and you talk about who got in, who hasn't, so many of our year didn't get in. Definitely most of them, which does statistically make sense because most people don't get into Oxford or Cambridge, as the case was in 2020. The results there were on the same day. So that was kind of weird because, of course, there were some that had got in, but for most of us, it was just this kind of bad dream that we didn't think was real because we'd all worked so hard for it and we'd all been really amped up, and suddenly now that was kind of it for all of us. But then I think slowly throughout the day came the second of the 5 stages of grief, which is anger. And I would say the anger was put into a few places. Number one, at the idea of Oxford in general, you know, I'm so angry that I didn't get in, of course. Maybe you're also angry at the people you don't know who took your places from your college and your course who'd gone in ahead of you. But there was definitely, at least from my part, I won't speak for everyone else, a saltiness towards the people in our school who did get in, whether it would be for other subjects at Cambridge, as I'm applying for Classics at Oxford, made completely no difference to me. But there was also one other guy who applied for my course who did get in, and there's definitely a level of salt there as well, thinking, I can't believe this guy got in and I didn't. I'm better in our classes than him. I wrote a better personal statement than him, whatever it is. But yeah, there was definitely some anger there as well. Also, anger at yourself. I was definitely beating myself up for putting in so much time with no fruition, and angry that I wasted other people's time, giving my teacher some practice admission tests that I'd written down for him to mark, or, you know, the fourth draft of my personal statement for him to look at, and I just felt like I was such a waste man, wasting everyone's time. And that anger was definitely the primary thing I felt for the first few days after I found out about the result. Once the anger starts to fade away, you just feel like, what have I done? I've let myself down here. This is such a shame. I've let my future self down. I've let my dreams down. I'm never going to be successful in my life. All of this kind of stuff. I'm sure so many of you will be feeling like this as well. You've put in so much of your time and mental capacity and thoughts into your Oxford application, and it is a real shame when you realise something you want so much is not available to you. I write a diary every day, and I've done that for 1,422 days. I looked that up. That's like 4 or 5 years. And the only 4 days I did not write in my diary in that whole time were the 4 days after I found out about Oxford, because I was just so lifeless. I did all the bare minimum work for my subjects that week. I was not happy around my friends, but I was just really sad in myself. And to be cynical, that depression part of the 5 stages of grief, of course, does get better, but probably didn't subside until I then decided to reapply at the end. Where at that point, it became kind of a steady focus. It doesn't matter if I've been rejected because I'm applying again. It's a new slate. If I get in the second time, it's not a problem, you know, I'm still there. And so I definitely had this massive chip on my shoulder, but that was the point where this kind of depression faded away. And I think for other people, that's probably just when you go to a new uni and you realise there are great friends there that you're meeting, the subject's pretty good, and you just move on. But this may last for a while, or at least in my case, this was definitely the one that lasted the most. The 4th stage is bargaining. Bargaining for me meant putting in all the subject access requests, freedom of information, feedback on my application, these kind of things, sending them to the college, to the department, to wherever I could to try and get as much information. And I'll show you at that point later about asking for information, exactly what mine said, and it was quite useful. And this next thing, I actually have never really told anyone that I did, but the feedback on my application basically said everything was good about it, apart from the admissions test, where you just scored so low, we didn't think you'd be able to keep up with the course. And what I actually did is I wrote back to them and I said, is it possible for me to take the admissions test of next year with everything else in my application this year and somehow get a place for next year if I get a certain grade? And of course that was never going to work. They wrote a polite enough email back, but very short and very curt about the admissions process is within the admissions process, and that's it. And I definitely felt quite embarrassed after I got that back, but in my head that was the way I dealt with the bargaining. But whoever came up with this 5 stages of grief is pretty accurate, because, you know, I was definitely trying to bargain. And then finally, the last stage of the grief is acceptance. And like I've talked about with the depression as well, the acceptance came for me in a form of not accepting it. That is to say, I worked out I wanted to reapply. So I was going to put everything behind me in the sense that I had another chance and I had to commit really hard, work on the stuff that they told me was a problem from my feedback, and I would accept my fate in as much as I would try again. There we go. I guess I was stubborn enough not to really accept it, but it paid off for me. For other people who decide that they want to go to another uni, which is also a great choice, they probably accept it as soon as they go there and realise, again, like I said before, they're having a great time, or whatever it is. Just another quick plug for my Instagram, Sans Oxford Studies. Follow it, but also feel free to DM me. This is a stressful time of year. I do have experience of both being rejected and accepted, freedom of information, if you're thinking about taking a gap year and reapplying. If you want to discuss any of those things, I'm more than happy to chat to any of you, so do DM. Alternatively, I look at all the YouTube comments, so please do write in there as well if you so wish. Also, if you're coming to Oxford next year, again, DM me on the Instagram. I would love to know which college you're going to, stuff like that. But now let's talk about the practical advice. If you've been rejected, what to do? First thing is just take your time to process it. I completely understand how it is to want something so much and that's been ripped away from you in a very quick process. It's just over. It really sucks. So take your time and don't expect it to go away so quickly. If you spent such a long time on your application, which I'm sure all of you will have, be kind to yourself and understand it will take some time for that to go. Do all the things you would normally do in this kind of case. Hang out with friends, try and be distracted. Get distracted by your schoolwork if you think that helps. Alternatively, if you don't, take a step back, and again, don't beat yourself up if you're not handing in such high work, if you're slightly lost a bit of motivation for your subjects. In the short term, that is. You need to get great A-levels in the end for whichever place you're going to go to. And similarly, I know some of you have mocks, maybe today, literally on results day, which is super harsh, or in the next few days. Try your best for them as well. And I know it is going to be very stressful this year, because you don't know how much these mocks may ever be useful because of what's going to happen with COVID. Again, when it was for me in 2020, if I didn't do well in my mocks, it didn't really matter because COVID wasn't a thing yet. It actually did become a thing, and then we got COVID grades, but we wouldn't have known it at this stage, so I could in my head quite happily be like, oh, mocks aren't important, I can just wallow in my self-pity. With that out of the way, over the next few weeks, and you'll know what the deadline for this is, request information on your application. I cannot stress enough, please do this. If there's a 1% chance you might want to reapply, you need to know what the shortcoming was on your application, because otherwise you're reapplying with no understanding of what you need to work on, and therefore you'll probably get the same result. For those who don't know what I'm talking about by subject access requests, freedom of information, companies have to provide you with any information that they have on you if you so request it. So basically, Oxford will have different pieces of information on you because they're looking through your application, and so you can request this, and they are mandated to give you what they know because it's some privacy thing. And so that's very useful because if they have notes about your scores on your interviews or your scores on the written work you submitted, they'll definitely have admissions test scores for you as well. They can send that to you. And separately, if you ask for feedback, they may give you the kind of percentage for the average person that was accepted for your course for their admissions test, or these kind of things. And you can kind of use the two in unison, the scores you personally got and the statistics the faculty or the college publish in general, to compare where you fell short compared to the people that got places. Also, you've spent so long on your application anyway, I think it's a nice bit of closure just to find out what they say. Sometimes it'll be very unuseful and they'll just say stuff like it was a particularly competitive year and all the applications were super strong. But in my case, they actually broke down my scores for most parts of my application, so I could really see, you know, wow, at least they like that. Okay, that was the problem. Okay, maybe that makes sense because I remember actually that was quite bad. Whatever it is. Look, some of you may not want to know, and that's absolutely fine. But I really would personally recommend you get as much information because there's a deadline on it and you can't get it after that. And so it's probably good to have it just in case you ever want to look back on it for whatever reason. I'm going to leave the forms that you can submit and email off in the description of this video, so do check them out. But I basically sent my college a quick email. All I had to say was, Dear Brasenose, I'm requesting feedback on my application. Please find the form attached, Sam. And then I just found this PDF, which you can find online. I'll put the link to the website. You just fill it out, scan it, whatever, send it to them, and they will get back to you. So do check out the stuff in the description. It maybe took 5 weeks to get results, and like I say, for me it was very useful because I found the problem. Just see what they say. They may say something unuseful for you. And I've got my feedback here, which I've never shown before, but we can see that I got a 5 out of 10 and a 6 out of 10 for my submitted work, which they say was satisfactory. Both ambitious essay topics, reasonably well tackled. And then we can see for my admissions test, I got 39% and 50%, which averages out at 44.5%, which places me at 94th out of 106, and they say was quite low. Then they said my interview was strong, and give me various compliments about it. But then we can see again, they basically conclude, our course is heavily linguistic, and your language scores, that's the admissions test, could not provide us with the confidence we were looking for, and then they end with some nice thing. So there we go. That's maybe useful for you also to compare what you get, because I was never sure with this stuff at the end that they say, we were no doubt what a keen and intelligent classicist we were interviewing. I don't know how generic that is, or if that was a genuine compliment, but with what you get, you can maybe see where this falls. So this would have been enough by itself. I got 44.5, which you can tell is a low percentage, and it placed me 94th out of 106, which again is going to be super low. Placed me about like in the bottom 15%, and of course Oxford only take the top 30% or whatever it is for my course. But actually with the other piece of information I requested, I could see exactly what the averages were. And I can see on the CAT that I did, the average for the verse was 57 and the prose was 68. And I got 39 and 50 compared to 57 and 68, so we can see it's way lower. And then there's some other stuff about, you know, exactly how many offers and how many people they took away at each point. But that's all I needed to know. I had basically proof that everything else was satisfactory to good, and it was just this admissions test that was the real problem. After you've got your admissions test, you can really start to think what your next stage is going to be. Are you going to firm one of the other choices you have, and you could easily go somewhere else, enjoy it just as much? The other choice is taking a gap year and reapplying. This is obviously a risk. There are no guarantees that you'll get a place, and actually, probably the opposite. If you've been rejected the first time, you should expect to be rejected again. If you produce basically the same application, you need to really improve something. So that's something to think about. On top of that, they're going to expect something better from someone who's taken a year out and, you know, sort of completed year 13 before making their UCAS, as opposed to someone who's kind of doing this at the start of year 13. So on top of that, You need to have maybe a bit more of a nuanced personal statement, maybe more nuanced answers to interviews, stuff like that. And then on top of that, you need to make improvements again based off yourself last year. And then the final thing to think about is the pressure you'll feel. I definitely felt a large reason I'd taken this gap year was to reapply. And I felt a pressure of basically, not only have I not got in the first place, it'll probably really crush me to get rejected twice. And also, I've wasted a year. On the plus side, I actually had a really great gap year job. That was inspiring, kept me entertained, was quite social with people my age as well. And also, in my head, it would be worth it, even if I didn't get in, because I would get the closure from knowing the second time I tried really hard again, and for whatever reason, Oxford was not meant to be for me. I gave it 2 of my best tries possible, and that's all you can ask for. I can never look back and think, what if, because I tried as hard as I could twice. On top of that, I had COVID in my year. It was just starting, so I thought I could miss the start of COVID in my gap year, and then by the time I go to uni, COVID would be much better, which is definitely the case. Maybe still something to think about this year. If you were to take a year out and then go back the year after, potentially COVID will be completely gone, and your uni experience could be as best as possible by basically preserving it for as long as possible and taking the dud year in your gap year. But if after all of this you're still thinking, no, I really want to go to Oxford, I reckon I could take constructive criticism, work on my application, I think I'll be able to deal with all the pressure, the loneliness, any of the other feelings you'll have during your gap year whilst your friends are maybe off at uni, then I really would encourage taking a gap year and reapplying. Of course, that's what I did, and it worked brilliantly for me, and it was the best decision ever. There's actually a third thing you can do, apart from just take a uni place and go, and then take a gap year and reapply, that some people did in my year, which is go to a university, take your offer, and then apply for Oxford whilst you're in your first year. So let me say that again. You're doing your first year course whilst also making a new UCAS application, applying to places, and the idea is if you get an offer for Oxford, you could then drop out of your uni, finish the rest of your gap year, and then go to Oxford. The benefit, of course, is maybe there's less to risk, because if you don't get into Oxford, then it's not as if you've taken a gap year for nothing. You're already in a university that you've chosen, and you can just carry on the rest of the way through. I decided not to do this for a few reasons. I felt I would maybe be spreading my eggs too thin, and I wouldn't be properly focused on my application, and I wouldn't properly be focused on having a great time at uni, because I would maybe be feeling the friends I'm making, I might be going somewhere else. I don't need to commit that much. Similarly with the course, I'm thinking, I want to spend all my time on my Oxford application, because that's my real dream. I don't care about doing that well. And then if I weren't to get in, I would feel maybe really behind. But I know some people who did that from my school. There are actually loads of them, probably more than 5 people who did that. And I definitely know one guy from Oxford this year who did that. He went to Durham to do English. He actually didn't even apply the first year at all. But then, whilst he was in Durham, he made a new UCAS form, got into Oxford, dropped out of Durham, and then that was just an Oxford first year with me. So unis do not necessarily care, but I would probably recommend just emailing whoever it is, your college, your faculty, whatever, because I think Cambridge care a lot more than Oxford about kind of poaching people from other unis. But I've seen it work firsthand. I've seen a guy who did this, applying whilst at a first year to kind of level the risk. Hopefully throughout this video, I've made you realise that no matter how you're feeling now, you are not alone. There'll be plenty of people watching this video in the comments section, in your school, wherever, who are feeling the exact same as you, and there've been plenty of people who feel like this every single year at this time of year from Oxbridge applications. However you're feeling is legitimate, and take your time to process everything, but just remember, you are not the only person in this situation. Hopefully that's somewhat comforting. And then we've talked about practically how to bounce back, requesting access, and then the options of going to a new uni and putting it behind you, or if you're really stubborn like me and really don't feel you can get over it, how reapplying is a real option as well. Potentially, even whilst you're at a uni, kind of mixing the two together. Hopefully this video has helped. Do let me know how you're feeling, and congrats to everyone who did get a place. You guys all massively deserve it, and maybe I'll see some of you around next year. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching. I promise you it will get better. I was there, but I'll see you all in the next video.